Welcome, everyone, to Star News Analysis, a special live bulletin by the Daily Star. You are watching this program on the 13th National Election and Referendum, brought to you by the Daily Star, live on the Daily Star's Facebook page and YouTube channel. In this special bulletin, I am Naziba Bashar with you throughout the program. We will also be analyzing the latest developments from the Daily Star's website as they stand this moment. First, let's take a look at the selected election-related stories on the Daily Star website. We have Yunus issues firm warning on polls violence, assures prompt transfer of power. The chief advisor urges restraint, calls election a future-defining national moment. We also have how to spot disinformation on social media and Shalish Kendro's report of nearly 500 injured, 2 killed in political violence in 10 days of February. Along with that, we have government to allocate Taka 25 lakh home and Taka 25 lakh aid for Deepu Das's family. Yunus's warning. Chief Advisor Professor Mohammad Yunus today called on all political parties to issue firm instructions to their leaders and activists from the national level down to the grassroots to ensure that no one engages in disorder, violence, intimidation, or any attempt to influence voters during the election process. During a televised address to the nation at 7 p.m., he said, any move to forcibly take over polling centers, disrupt voting, or provoke unrest would not be tolerated by the state. He also warned against the spread of misinformation, particularly on social media platforms, saying rumors and fabricated content could undermine public confidence and fuel instability. Speaking of instability and disinformation, our story on disinformation says as Bangladesh approaches its 13th national parliamentary elections, social media is likely to play an increasingly influential role in shaping public opinion. Alongside legitimate political debate, however, the pre-election period often brings a surge in false or misleading content designed to confuse voters, inflame tensions, or undermine confidence in the electoral process. On polls-related violence and political violence, Shalish Kendro's report says political violence and harassment of journalists have escalated sharply ahead of the February 12th national election, with dozens of incidents reported across the country in recent weeks. In a press statement, ASK said its documentation unit recorded 58 incidents of political violence between February 1 and February 10, which is today, leaving 489 people injured and 2 killed. The government has decided to allocate Taka 25 lakh home and Taka 25 lakh aid. Under the government assistance program, the Taka 25 lakh will be allocated for the construction of a house for the family of Deepu Das, who was lynched by a mob, said Chief Advisor's office today. The National Housing Authority will implement the project. Deepu Chandra Das, a young man from the Hindu community, was brutally killed by a mob on December 18th last year in the square Masterbari area of Moymonsingh's Bhaluka Upazila. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just had a quick overview of the key stories from the Daily Star website. To analyze these developments, we are now joined by the Daily Star's digital editor, Tanim Ahmed. Welcome to the program. So initially, we want to start off with Yunus's warnings because I believe it's related to much of the stories that we're going to be reading later on. So the firm warning on polls violence comes 2 days just before the election, a day before the election. And we see a lot of these violence actually happening at the grassroots level. So if I am to ask what kind of measures they might actually take if such incidents do occur just ahead of the polls.
Right. The violence itself, or Yunus's warning in this regard, comes at a time just before the elections, and we've seen this government to be quite indecisive, a step back and a step backward, or a step forward, and so on. It's been like that since the day it took office.
Yeah.
Now, this is perhaps the one time that it must take a firm stance. Professor Yunus does make the right statements. but they also have to back it up with proper action. Now, if it's violence,
Mhm.
then there can be law and order arrangements, or the law and order can be asked, like the law enforcement agencies can be asked to take proper measures. If it's a matter of violation of electoral code, the code of conduct has penalties, or and they can act appropriately. The local election officials
Mhm.
can take action. Um, but at the same time, the warning to not to influence voters and to restrain from any kind of violent activities, naturally, or influence voters, or have any kind of impact on the elections.
Right.
That must come, mm, just like it must come from the top. It has to also um, be reflected and in the grassroots with proper deployment and a show of force, so to speak, but also proper intent.
Right.
Now, of the risky centers across Bangladesh, eh, they have already taken some measures,
Mhm.
and which hopefully will go towards deterring these illegal activities, or any activities that will um, impact on or affect the election.
Right.
So yeah.
So there is an assumption that polls violence on the day of election is almost inevitable, and we've already seen armies and other law enforcement agencies on the roads already patrolling the cities. In that case, if polls violence does occur on the day of election, are law enforcers allowed to use force?
um, it's one is when if
I just want to add to that question. And if they do use force, what will be the reaction of the
right,
public? Do you think?
it's one is if it's a law and order situation, they bring it under control. Naturally, they will it is expected that the law enforcers will remain restrained, and they will try and quell the situation as quickly as they can, and without with as little violence as possible, or with being as softly as possible,
Right.
so to speak. The other thing is code violation, and that could result in disqualification. Perhaps that would be the ultimate thing. Also, if it really worsens too much, then certain spots, certain pockets can presiding officers and returning of the election officials locally at the centers could actually come and say, we're suspending elections here. It's not conducive, and we don't think it's going to be a fair polls. We'll hold it some other time, and that will be the end of it then.
Right. So we've already seen in the report by Aino Shalish Kendro that nearly 500 injured and 2 killed in just 10 days. And that's just from the first of this month to today. And there's also a fear that much of the looted weapons after the uprising, they haven't been recovered. Many of the licensed firearms haven't been handed in as per the directives from the government. So what do you make of this situation with looted firearms still missing, licensed firearms still not handed in, and already violence peaking?
And of course, to add to that, the government also allowed the candidates to have
Have,
firearms,
yeah,
right?
firearms. Yeah,
Apply for licenses
right.
and have
Yeah.
firearms, or armed bodyguards. Yes, that does add to the risk factor.
Mhm.
Certainly does. But at the same time, you have to look at it in perspective. That is, over the last uh, however many months the interim government has been in power, the law and order situation has been deteriorating. It's been really bad since the beginning. Um, One of the reasons is that police was not active, law enforcement was quite lax,
Right.
and so given that that law enforcement has been really lax, police have not been active, the the political forces are strong. Um, and this is a very high stakes election with tensions running high. This violence, while we must deplore any violence. This violence is not really as much as many had anticipated. In that respect, it's fairly it's much lower than perhaps what might have been.
What could have been, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and it's unfair to compare these numbers with previous elections, because the previous elections, in when under the Awami League regime, there was hardly any opposition fighting for any seats. There was hardly any genuine competition, and also the government was really, really strong and hard, so people wouldn't risk it.
Yeah.
Now, however, there's almost an equal footing. There's a proper competition, and given the lawlessness, or rather the deterioration of law and order in the previous months, it's not to be. It's nothing that should get us overly worried.
Right.
But we should certainly keep an eye on it, and people should be watching over it.
The Aino Shalish Kendra also reported about attacks on journalists. 11 journalists were attacked in December 2025, while the number rose to 16 in January 2026. And in the first 10 days of February alone, at least 47 journalists were attacked across the country. It also referred to the incident on February 7th when 21 journalists of an online news portal, Bangladesh Times, were detained from their workplace and taken to the army camp. I want to know what your thoughts are about the security of journalists on polling day.
So far, we do not see, or the perception is not such that because we're journalists, there is a specific threat to us. It's not like that in the field, or we have not heard such reports from our correspondents that journalism itself, journalists, because of being journalists, are being threatened or are fearing for their safety. There may be pockets, but the situation does not seem like that. Whatever threats there are, maybe to individuals, maybe to certain outlets, but not overall journalists per se. But even then, because the situation is still, you could say, fluid, and law enforcers are unlikely to come to the aid of journalists if they are mobbed at some point. So that is also something to also keep in mind, and journalists should be careful about their safety. It should be at the back of their heads. They should keep it in mind. But it's not something yet. It's not something that has,
like, they're being separately targeted or anything.
Yes, there's not a whole predominant number of journalists who are absolutely worried about their safety. It's not like that yet.
Right. Now, when we're talking about violence, the matter of disinformation actually comes in quite easily, because we've seen many of the violent incidents that have occurred happened due to disinformation on social media. According to our own report, in this environment, the ability to recognize disinformation is no longer optional. It becomes a basic civic skill. False claims, manipulated videos, and misleading narratives can spread rapidly online, often faster than corrections or fact checks. Learning how to assess what you see before sharing or reacting can help protect both individual users and the wider democratic process. When it comes to actually recognizing disinformation, how do you think that is possible for the layman, or perhaps somebody who is using social media and has a lower educational background? In that case, and disinformation, as far as we know, it spreads through mostly that class of people. So how do you think this is going to play out? How?
Once again, since this election is going to be competitive after a long time, and there are many players, this battle will be fought in the field, physically, as in with the ballots, as well as on the social media, and through misinformation and disinformation. We've seen this whole misinformation, disinformation campaign for months now.
Right.
and it's been building up for quite some time. It was expected because again, it's going to be a competitive election, and this will be, we should probably accept it as a feature of election, like an election time feature that you have to watch out for.
Right.
Now, while misinformation, disinformation has increased, so have fact checkers.
Right.
It Right now there are several fact checking outfits in Bangladesh, in Dhaka. In fact, some news outlets also have their own fact checkers.
Right.
And because we are constantly exposed to these kinds of things, we have also learned to sort of identify, you could say intuitively,
Right.
But even you or I, we do not have the technical skills to do that, and neither do many others who are just lay users.
Right.
That is, and so naturally we can fall victims to cleverly designed misinformation or disinformation campaigns. The one way to keep this from happening is to go back to your trusted news outlet.
Right.
You don't have to come to Daily Star or Prothom Alo or Shomokal. Just go to the trusted news outlet that you know gives proper news, that has a process of verification and news substantiation, and then they publish the news. That's the one. If you feel that this is a trustworthy news outlet, you should keep referring to that.
Right.
So if someone looks at something, hears something, watches something, should go back to refer to whatever news outlet they follow, or check with the fact checkers. Now, of course, people with lower skills out in the country who do not have much of who are not technologically that savvy, it would be very difficult for them.
Right.
But they generally, what happens is they ask someone they know in their family, someone they next of someone close to them, maybe their friend, their employer, their employee, who they consider to be tech savvy,
Right.
and check with them. So it's always this system of verification that you have, and it's a matter of using this method, or however we verify our news. It's using this a bit intuitively and with a great degree of common sense.
So when we talk about disinformation, misinformation, rumors, I believe it was a rumor ultimately that led to the mob lynching of Dipu Chandra Das. Now, we know that it's been a while, and now the government has decided to allocate Taka 25 lakh home and Taka 25 lakh aid for Dipu Das's family. And here, advisor C.R. Abrar has also said that the assistance is insignificant compared to the value of human life. I want to know your opinion about the amount of the assistance being given. But first, I want to ask you that why do you suppose that this move came so late? The incident happened quite long ago, and it's been 2 months now almost. And now the government has decided to do this. Does it have anything to do with the election coming up?
Perhaps it might have been more. It might have been. It would have been easier for us to think that yes, it is because of the election. If the government were a party in the election, it's not. I think it comes as an afterthought.
Right.
It's not something that the government had considered at first. And Dipu Chandra Das wasn't a political heavyweight, like say Osman Hadi,
Right.
whose family has been rewarded, or rather compensated. And his brother has been given a
post at the High Commission of the UK. Yes.
Yes. So a foreign posting and so on. Dipu Chandra Das's family is not going to get such plush jobs, that kind of a compensation. And it's true that human life is invaluable and human life cannot be measured by money. But it also becomes apparent how this government doesn't value Dipu Chandra Das's life as much as it does Hadi's life.
Right.
And but these are, no matter what, these are basically especially with Dipu Chandra Das, it's just a band-aid measure kind of thing.
Right.
It's the mob, it's the spread of disinformation, it's the police's failure to protect lives, and that has not improved one bit. We don't know for sure if the government has put in place enough provisions, if there have been strict instructions, or if there are arrangements that this kind of thing will not recur.
Right.
So yes, the death was gruesome.
It was possibly one of the most gruesome ones we've seen recently in recent times.
I've only heard of it. I have not watched the video, so and I don't want to. Naturally, it's
but traumatizing.
Yes, and yes, the money will perhaps come in handy. It will naturally never compensate for a lost life completely, for sure.
Thank you so much, Tanim Ahmed, for staying with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us in Star News Analysis. We'll get back to you soon.